No,
This is the
we are so honored that you've come and graced it.
Thank you so much.
You have such a huge fan following that I was very, very curious to meet you in person as best as one can in these circumstances.
As what Zoom wants us to do. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we can start.
Yeah.
Participants keep joining and we can start. Okay, I'll just introduce.
Should I share the screen or?
Yeah, Dr. Sachdeva, I'll just introduce you formally and then you can share the screen.
Fair enough.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all the attendees of this session on decoding disabilities in children. This is the final session of the certificate course being offered by the Department of Human Development and Family Empowerment of Janki Devi Memorial College and Aditi Mahavidyalaya. The Human Development Department offers a paper, a course on children with special needs, which covers various areas of childhood disabilities. In the last 1 month, we have had special educators, doctors, people in the field coming and addressing the students on disabilities and the challenges faced by them and the change in attitude that has to be brought in the community and various aspects of special education, integrated education and inclusive education. This is an attempt to sensitize the students, the faculty in the area of disability, because many of our students are expressing a desire to go into B.Ed with special education. They work with children who have special needs. I welcome our principal, Professor Swati Pal, to this session. She's been very passionate about this course right from the beginning and has always been interested in knowing from me what all the sessions entail. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our distinguished speaker for the day, Dr. Sanjay Sachdeva, who is currently the Director ENT at Max Healthcare. He brings with him 30 years of noteworthy experience in the profession. He's a regular operating faculty at various state associations of otolaryngologists of India on varied subjects like skull-based surgery, surgery for snoring, cochlear implant, endoscopic sinus surgery, and laser surgery. He is also an advisor for Indian Association of Surgeons for sleep apnea. Dr. Sachdeva has done his educational qualifications from the prestigious Maulana Azad Medical College, New Delhi, and he has published widely in various national and international journals and co-authored a plethora of books in the area of ENT. He's also been a visiting operating faculty at various international conferences in the area of base skull surgery. We are indeed very privileged to have you with us here today, Dr. Sachdeva. And this is the third time that you are addressing the students of human development. We've had 2 very successful workshops with you in the past. I now request our principal, Professor Swati Pal, to address the gathering and welcome Dr. Sanjay Sachdeva to this session. Welcome, Dr. Pal.
Thank you so much. As I said, Dr. Sachdeva, it is indeed a pleasure and a privilege for me to be welcoming you for this valedictory lecture, I would call it, for this particular course, which is very, very close to my heart. It is close to my heart because, of course, I am in, I won't call it the business, but I would call it in the labor of looking after young people, 3,000 plus of them every single year, the past 26 years. And I am very keen to ensure that every human being, especially my students, are completely physically and mentally fit and sound. My passion also arises from the fact that I have my mother, who is now 84 years of age, and with the passage of time, she has an acute glaucoma problem, but along with that, in the last decade plus, I find that she suffers from acute hearing loss. And of course, we have provided her with the machine and all of that, whatever is required to facilitate her. But nonetheless, I can see the anxiety and the trauma that accompanies the fact that she is gradually losing the ability to hear as clearly as she could when she was younger. Now, when I look at people suffering from the loss of these senses, sight, vision, hearing, when I see them suffering like this, it is a matter of great, how should I say, it's for me, people, doctors like you are really saviors to all of us who would sooner or later be facing these crises in our life. So I find myself in a very happy place today because I have been rung up by a great number of people, not necessarily from our own institution, but from outside, some of whom know you personally. You have treated them and their children. I have heard so much about you from Nirmala Muralidharan, who has, as she said, rightly called you now for the third time to address our gatherings. So I was really keen that I should at least be there to welcome you in person on this virtual screen. So a very warm welcome to you, Dr. Sachdeva, and I wish this audience a very, very meaningful time with Dr. Sachdeva. My request to the audience would be, I've been noticing that on and off you have been forgetting to mute yourself. That leads to a lot of disturbance and distraction for the speaker. I would request all members of the audience to please keep yourself muted and also switch off your videos so that we can give the floor literally of the screen to Dr. Sachdeva. Thank you all very much. Warm welcome.
Thank you so much for such kind words, Dr. Swati and Dr. Nirmala. For letting me in third time this whole episode. So like you, I also share a passion, and my passion is all about hearing disability in children, because this is one subject where fields like ENT have really made a difference in life. It's a game changer. So if you can actually get a child who's born deaf and dumb back hearing and back to school for them is going to make a lot of difference in one life. So that's one life saved. Somebody who's going to be bound by sign language, communication disabilities, and practically not to make anything of their own life in terms of commercial sense as well as social and psychological pressures involved with it. So that is certainly for us an ENT surgeon. It's a boon to be born in an era where we can actually make a difference. Earlier, of course, we were quite handicapped with practically no ability to take care of a child who's born deaf and dumb. So if you give me permission, should I share my screen now?
Yes, sir, you can do that. Thank you so much.
So the topic that I'm talking about is what hearing impaired children have to say. So the ear is more than that meets the eye, in the sense like it's a very, very intricate organ. It's a very delicate organ, and like any special sense, and that is why it's called special sense. We've got 5 special senses, and you all are quite familiar with it. And one of them is the ear, and it has very well balanced kind of a system which works so beautifully in nature that if it is not working, like Dr. Swati has already mentioned, that her mother, who's 84 years old and not able to hear too well now, and she's spite of the fact that she's using hearing aids, but communication skills and the fact that these old people then get excommunicated because they can't hear anybody very well, and so they just keep quiet and they keep sitting on a center. So it's a silent disability, very silent. Unlike sight, a patient cannot see. You will be able to see it from miles apart. But here, a person would then not be able to hear
and get excommunicated and be almost in a cocoon life of their own is a very depressing sight to see, especially your parents when you're doing that. So having said that, uh, so let's have the next slide. There's some glitch here, just 1 second. Is it okay now?
Yes,
Yes,
it's
sir.
visible. Absolutely visible. Yeah.
Okay. What is a hearing loss? Hearing loss is a deterioration in one's ability to hear sound and speech, which can occur across age and gender. Hearing loss occurs as a result of injury occurring in the outer, middle, or inner ear. When the injury is to the outer or the middle ear, it is characterized or called as conductive hearing loss. That means the sound is not being conducted to the inner ear. But when the hearing disability is in the inner ear nerve and its communication to the brain, it is called sensorineural hearing loss. So interestingly, this is hearing loss is one of the most common conditions affecting older adults. It's estimated that approximately 10% of US population suffers from hearing loss. An estimated 1/3 of Americans older than 60 and a half of 60 years, and half of those older than 85 have some degree of hearing loss. And we also have very old Indian data, which according to National Sample Survey Organizations, Disability Survey 2002, 306 million Indians are hearing impaired. Can we just reduce this? Yeah, this I don't know. So a rough estimate from industry sources indicate that about 5% of Indian population is hearing impaired and 10% of the affected are using hearing aids. And this data on India seems to be grossly underestimated according to this, the clinical practices that we are actually following and seeing. I'm sure this is a very underestimated data. So you can appreciate the quantum of disability which is there in the community. So if we come on to basics, so we say that spoken communication is uniquely human. So it's a human entity. So that's very important. And there is no congenital dumbness. That means no child is ever born dumb. So that's something which you have to really, there's a take home message. Nobody ever is born dumb. So if a child hears, child will speak. So that dumbness, the deaf and dumb part is not inherited. The dumb part is because of the hearing disability. So otherwise, a child who's born deaf will not speak, and this child will become deaf and dumb. Hearing impairment is common in children. Approximately 1.9% of children have trouble hearing. Children may be born with hearing impairment and may develop it later. So that means a child who's born earlier may be absolutely normal and then may develop hearing disability later on. The implications and approach to these two entities may be totally different. So you will have to approach them differently. You have to take this whole entity in two different parameters and spheres. One, children who are born deaf, children who are otherwise normal initially and then get deaf later. So when we are talking of hearing disability, so we must realize that normal hearing ability in a child is 10 decibel. So decibel is a sound level which we are using. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of that. But what you need to really realize is that whispering on water dripping or rustling of leaves is basically 20 to 30 decibel. And anything which is 20 to 30 decibel in a child is going to cause problems. And I'm going to get on to that as in the next few slides. Normal conversation is about 20 to 60 decibel. And if you have more than 40 decibel hearing loss, then you call it moderate hearing loss. Above 60 is moderately severe, above 80 is severe, and 90 and above is profound hearing loss. So a lawnmower is almost at a 90 decibel level. Vacuum and baby crying is at the 65 decibel level, and normal conversation is about 20 to 60 decibel level. So if you can really correlate with the practical situations, that if a child cannot hear normal conversation, that means he has a hearing disability about 40 to 60 decibel. Just 1 second, there's some issue here with the net. I'll just come. Just 1 second. I think they put it off. Just give me 1 second.
Absolutely, no problem.
Yeah, sorry for the delay.
Not at all, not at all.
So what do we expect from a developing baby? A baby who's born, how do we figure out if the child is born deaf and dumb? So this, see, the very fact that we have to recognize that a
The child back the hearing ASAP as soon as possible, because if you don't do that, then the formative years of this child, when the brain is developing, will be minus sound going to the brain, will cause a lot of difficulties in development, development delays, not only hearing disability, but also emotional, social, psychological, and other learning disabilities which will come. And this is something which is a challenge, and we have to recognize this fact, and that is why we have to act very fast, and that is why the disability becomes very important for us, because one, it is a hidden disability. So what do we, so our milestones have to be very clearly seen, and these are some things like in your household, if you have a small child who's born or maybe a couple of months old, then please concentrate on how the hearing is going. Other disabilities can be seen grossly, but this one you have to really be proactive in finding out what is happening. So if you can remember this chart, that 0 to 4 months, a child has a startle to loud sound. So a child is sleeping in a cot, suddenly a door bangs, or a normal child who's sleeping has to startle. If that startle reflex is not there, then start thinking. And if the child does not turn head to locate the source of sound at 0 to 4 months, this is also an important fact that you really have to recognize. What are the signs, symptoms that you can see from 4 to 8 months of a child? These children between 4 to 8 months should notice sound around them, him or her, I mean, basically. So if you have a sound, they will like kind of turn their head to find out the source of sound. And they will smile when you
Dr. Sachdeva, you're not audible.
Hello?
Yeah, now you are audible. In between, we lost your voice, sir.
Oh, okay. All right. Am I okay now?
Yes, absolutely.
Right, right. So should I do this again or just carry on with
It's
where I
okay. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so a child who's 4 to 8 months should notice sound around him or her. The child will smile when spoken to, and there would be a babble and understands simple words like bye bye. Say bye bye, and the child will start responding. So that is a response to sound, not visual cue. It's going to be a sound related. So even if you speak from one side, not stand in front of the child and say bye bye, the child should respond. So that's important. Most of the time, what happens is parents start they are a little defensive. They nobody wants their child to be deaf. So there are sometimes denials as well, and we face them almost routinely. They say, no, once I see the child and child starts responding, it's actually a visual cue, not the hearing cue. So you have to differentiate between the visual impact and the hearing impact, which are two different entities altogether. So 8 to 4 months, a child respond to his or her name. Child will there will be some simple words like mama and papa being spoken, and they use his voice to draw attention. So they would try to speak few things, but there will be no clarity there, but just mama and papa, maybe a double, which they will be able to hear. Between 14 months to 2 years, they start developing vocabulary. They understand and obey simple instructions, again not visual, audio. That means if you speak from one side or from behind, the child should be able to respond, and they will be able to put two words together. So these are very common causes of deafness is a newborn child. And if you have something of that kind of a history, then you have to be very, very proactive, especially child who is born small, low birth weight, low APGAR scoring, and the child has had some infection during early perinatal period in terms of jaundice, meningitis, chest infection, diarrhea, needing medicines, needing admissions or ICU care, then you have to be a little more proactive, because these children are more prone to being deaf, not born deaf, but deafness because of these factors. So there is something which is called congenital infections. So either congenital infections can be either prenatal, antenatal, or postnatal. So the prenatal conditions or antenatal conditions are what we call as TORCH. So if you remember TORCH and TORCH-S, the infections which are basically causing this kind of a problem are toxoplasmosis, others rubella, cytomegalovirus, herpes zoster, and syphilis, which is not seen very commonly nowadays in our country at least, but in of course other third world countries there is still syphilis available. So these are the ones which will cause congenital deafness. Child will have deafness from birth. Then of course there are genetic reasons as well. The deafness can be genetic, so they will be passed on from one family to another, one person to another, especially in consanguineous marriages. Then newborn jaundice is a very common cause for deafness. Low birth weight, these children are prone to be deaf. Low APGAR scoring, that means their child has birth asphyxia, they can't breathe when they were born, and you have to resuscitate the child, and their oxygenation is low, so the brain doesn't get adequate oxygenation right in the few hours of their birth, and that can cause problems. So development abnormalities of the ear, which can be seen. So you can have small ear, outside ear, the canals are not formed. There can be a preauricular tag here, or there can be a small deformity here, which will again might just give you a signal that there is a possibility that the inner ear is not developed, or the nerve is not developed, or something else is there, and the child may be deaf, especially in one-sided deafness. So that's also important. We need to know whether one-sided deafness is there or not. So these are important aspects. So in an older child, you can have common infections like middle ear infections, adenoids, head injury, mumps. Sometimes these children are getting antibiotics because of admissions, and these antibiotics can be damaging to the inner ear and then cause deafness. But this deafness is in a child who was otherwise born normal, but then gets hearing disability later on because of these factors. Simple things can be like impacted wax in the ear, which is a quite a common situation. And this is only going to cause you temporary hearing loss. But it's not that simple in the sense like that. Sometimes few months can pass where the child has impacted wax and not able to hear. And you think the child is growing normally, the child is actually behaving normally, but you must realize that even if there is a loss of hearing about 30 decibel because of this impacted wax, like I told you, even 20 decibel of wax hearing disability because of wax or any other cause will cause learning disability, because these are formative years, and every month, every day of that month is important, because brain is developing very rapidly. Brain develops almost 80% in first 2 years of life. And in this era, in this time span, if you're not able to give sound, adequate sound, then few sounds in that 20 decibel will not reach the brain and will not develop. So this child will have some kind of a learning disability in terms of pronouncing words properly later on. And you think it's a speech defect, it's probably a tongue tie or something. Actually, that's not true. It may be a learning disability which has occurred because of this very mild hearing loss. It can be as simple as a wax. So even wax in a child is an important entity. So similarly, sometimes foreign objects in the ear which can cause total impaction and not letting sound go inside the ear may be an important aspect. If once an infection goes, this infection might have damaged a eardrum, and if the eardrum is damaged, there's a perforation in the eardrum, the sound will go onto the eardrum, there'll be no eardrum, and the sound will actually go directly inside, and this sound quality is not good. So there will be a disability of hearing, and this can have direct bearing again on learning aspects. So the hearing loss, like I said, even below 15 to 20 decibel sound, which is almost like rustling of leaves or people whispering, is significant in a growing up child. This is critical in growing child who's learning language, as some or certain parts of speech falls in this graph, and this will be missed, and that is why this child will not be able to speak as clearly as you and me. So that's an important aspect. So these are the signs where you will have to be very proactively looking at when the child is when you feel. And now you do that for every child. Earlier, the norm was that any child who's either low birth weight, low Apgar, possibly antenatal infection, mother mother had fever, mother had German measles, or mother had some drugs during pregnancy. These are the children who are at high risk, and they were the ones who were actually left for screening. But we realize that that is not true, because you will be missing out children who are otherwise absolutely normal with normal antenatal, perinatal history, but have deafness. And this is a large population. So if you see 10 people, 10 children with high risk, you will miss out another 10 which have had no high risk at all, no risk at all, but they have deafness. So that is why now the screening program is universal for every single child who's born. Wherever this child is born in India has to have a screening done for hearing within 1 month of birth, and if this is not has not been done, then at least by 3 months of age. And if there is any disability seen at 3 months of age, then you have to be proactive, because you don't want to miss time. You don't want the hearing disability to carry on for longer periods of time, so that there is no learning disability. So this is an important aspect. And now, as we go on, I will also try to tell you the screening program has become more robust. Obviously, things have really improved from whatever literature we're getting from international papers. And now we are doing all the screening facilities in our country, whether it is a government hospital or a private hospital or a private clinic, or even smaller places, smaller villages, 3-tier cities, they have a very robust screening program. So the signs which you and I will have to see in a baby is up to 4 months of age, that newborn doesn't startle at loud sounds. As weeks go by, it doesn't respond to your voice, such as smiling, cooing, or calming down. And this is an important aspect. And once the child is 4 to 9 months, this baby will not smile when spoken to, nor notice sounds that toys that make sound. Otherwise, the child will look at the toy which is making sound. So that's an important aspect. That is why there was always sound being produced by toys, and that is what is being used as a tool to understand whether the child is able to hear or not. Now, this child who's 4 to 9 months of age will not turn his or her head towards familiar sounds like mother's cooing or mother speaking, which is not visual cue coming from the side. So mother's at the back, the child is sleeping, the mother is trying to speak, but the child is not responding. So this child is not making any babbling noises, doesn't seem to understand hand motions like bye bye wave and all those kind of things. 9 to 15 months, the child is still infant still isn't babbling much nor attempting to repeat sounds, doesn't use voice to get attention, doesn't respond to his name. This is a sign of hearing disability in this age group. And if the child is between 15 to 24 months, that means 2 years of age, child isn't using many simple words, can't point to any body part when you ask. So there is no audio clue. So they will be able to give you visual responses, but not audio responses. They can't name common objects, and they don't listen when there is a song going on or some sound is going on. Not television. Television has both visual and audio. So anything like a radio or something, or a toy which is making a noise, and that is what is going to cause problems. So in a toddler and school age children, this is about before 2 years, and now we go on to a little older child who's almost going to go to school, or a toddler. These children have difficulty in understanding what people are saying. So they will not be interactive. Speech is defective and different than other children. They will not be able to speak clearly because there is some disability. Some part of their hearing mechanism is not working too well, and so there will be some frequencies which are missing. So they will be able to hear some sound when the speech is there, and some sound will be missed. So that part of the sound which is missed is not represented by speech. So that is important. Whatever you hear, you will be able to speak. So if you are born in Japan, you'll be able to talk in Japanese. But if you're born in India, you'll be able to talk in whatever your mother language is, whatever people are speaking. So first 1 year in a child is only listening and getting everything assimilated. The computer is going on. And if there's any defect in the listening process, then there will be a problem in whatever is being produced later. And that is why these children, their clarity of speech. So people say that there's probably a tongue tie or something. No, that's not true. It's actually a hearing disability which has produced this malformed speech, so to say. So they don't reply when called by name. They turn up the volume of television. There's a learning disability and poor academic performance for the very fact that they'll be missing out on what is happening in school, or maybe on a Zoom lecture or whatever the classes are going on now. And they keep saying or what in English sometimes, and that will happen several times in a day. They watch faces very intently, try to kind of pick up sound. They know there is a sound coming. They know that something is happening there, but clarity is not there. The words are not clear because obviously things are not clear to them, and they will be looking at you intently. So when a child is looking at you intently, trying to make out what's happening and not able to grasp everything, so you feel there's a learning disability. A few people sometimes get even cornered to being saying as they have autism, but that's not true. That they actually have a learning disability. So inability to hear leads to quite a bit of frustration in a child. So imagine a child, they can't express, they don't know what's happening to them. When they are in a class, I mean, obviously pre-COVID times, they are in a class and everybody is speaking and interactive, and the teacher is speaking and the children are singing back or talking back. Now this child who cannot hear too well is sitting on a corner trying to make out what's happening, and why is he not be able to be participating? So he's not participative, he or she is not participative. That makes them very frustrated, and then they become aggressive or they become quite reclusive. So these two factors a teacher will be able to pick up very rapidly. And this hearing disability, like I've already told you, may not be a long-standing hearing disability. This child may be absolutely normal when born, normal till some age, and now picked up an infection because of middle ear problems or adenoids or something, and their hearing has gone down, and that is why this whole thing is there. But this, if not recognized for, let's say, a few months to a year, will cause disability which can happen and be a permanent feature for them. So that is something, that is where we are. Our role is more is there to be more proactive, more understanding, and trying to figure out that if that is the situation, then we need intervention as soon as possible. So this temporary hearing loss in children, even though there is a temporary hearing loss, like I've told you, because of middle ear infection, glue ear perforations, or enlarged adenoids, is harmful to speech and language development during formative years, therefore should be diagnosed and treated promptly. So these are few hearing tests for newborn. So the hearing test of newborn, sorry, the or is not right there. So negative impact of undiagnosed hearing loss on language, social, emotional, cognitive, academic, and vocational development. So it's a global phenomenon. It's not just simple one single disability, that's hearing disability. It encroaches on other faculties as well, and the impact is multifactorial. So that is the reason why we want to be we need to be working on it very fast. Therefore, early identification and intervention is very important. All babies should be screened before 1 month and should pass hearing test by 3 months of age. So I'm not going to go into the details of hearing a test, which may not be part of our curriculum, but you need to know that there are two main tools which are used for hearing screening universally, globally, as well as in India. We have all the tools here. One is an autoacoustic emission and auditory brainstem response. And most of our children, they go through both together, because one test can sometimes mislead and can be normal, but actually the child is having a hearing impairment. I'll just give you a little very simple phenomena here. How is that happening? The autoacoustic emission is actually a representation of outer hair cells of the cochlea. You know, cochlea is the inner ear, the main hearing organ. Like I showed you a diagram earlier, that outer ear is from the canal till the eardrum. Then the middle ear, which has got these three small bones, which you're quite aware of. And this eardrum, external ear, and the middle ear, if there is any problem where there, will cause conductive hearing loss. Anything which is beyond that will cause sensory neural hearing loss. So cochlea is the first part of the inner ear, the main hearing organ, from where the the impulses go to the nerve and then go on to the brain through the brainstem and go up. So that is the pathway, the auditory pathway or the hearing pathway. And the autoacoustic emission is only testing the outer hair cells of cochlea. So if you have any damage or any problem beyond that, then that will be missed. So you can actually have outer hair cell normal, that means autoacoustic emission is normal, but the inner ear, rest of the part or the nerve is not working, and then you can have BERA or brainstem evoked, or ABR, or BERA as it is called, auditory brainstem response, being negative. So that is why we do both the tests together. So then you do not miss out on any hearing disability, whether it is a disability at the outer hair cell or the inner hair cell. Autoacoustic emission may be normal with outer hair cell being normal, but the damage can be further up, and then also there will be a disability. So that is why we do both the screening tests together. So I would say that intervention services as early as possible, that has already been talked about at length. And the reason I've told you why, because of the multifactorial situation. So simple things like wax buildup, infections, middle ear should be dealt with doctors. We have, of course, now a hearing disability which can be taken up by hearing aids. We have cochlear implants, which are actually a boon for ENT surgeons because they make a difference, they change the life. We also then do speech therapy, which is a very aggressive speech therapy, especially with children who are using hearing aids and implants, and they will make a difference. So there's a lot of hard work from all the faculties which are looking after the hearing disability, right from the grassroots level till the end. I mean, so it's a teamwork. You need to have a complete, robust team to look after this child and then get this child back to normal, back to school going, back to normal life, normal communication, and a productive part of the society. So assistive learning devices in classroom also help here. We also then, our aim is to basically get them into mainstream schools and not to have any special schools. We want them to be in a normal school. So that's very important. That's our aim. So I don't think whether you would really would be interested in listening so much about hearing aids, but hearing aids differ from each other in design, size, ease of handling, volume control, availability of special features. However, they all are similar components that they all have similar components like a microphone, an amplifier, a receiver, and a battery power for to look after the electronic parts. And these are the types of hearing aids which you will probably see. So just a small diagrammatic representation, very simple. You can have behind the ear hearing aid. This is the behind the ear hearing aid. So this is the machine here with the microphone, and then the sound is then going into the ear. That you have a mold which will fit this ear so that this doesn't keep slipping. So it fits the hollow of the ear here, and this pipe is hollow there and going into the canal, which will give sound. Then you have in the ear hearing aid, which looks more sophisticated, but can be seen, and you immediately get it to the skin color so that it's not very visible. That's what most of the people, they want invisible hearing aids. So they don't want to show people that there is a problem. Few people say it doesn't make a difference, but anyway, that is how it is. It's a personal choice. Then you have in the ear canal, in the canal hearing aid, which is smaller, and you can only just fit it into the canal, and you don't have it anything like in the hollow, which is like in the ear. And then you have completely in the canal hearing aid, which is absolutely small, going inside, and that can be that is not seen. And most of the celebrities and important personalities, they are using this kind of a thing, so they don't want anybody to know that there is a hearing disability. Advances in hearing aids in the early 1990s, the programmability was introduced into the hearing aid, and that changed the game. And this allowed for direct software manipulations to adjust gain, frequency response, and filter settings in a hearing aid. So in other words, I don't want you to get confused about this aspect. The only thing that changed here was actually that you could program. So it was a digital hearing aid. It was not an analog system. It turned digital. So you, with the help of a computer, you could change the setting of the hearing aid depending on where this person is going to work. So the person is wearing a hearing aid in a factory or an office which has got a lot of sound, or in a mall or in a cinema hall or wherever, vis-a-vis somebody who's working in an office which is absolutely silent, or somebody is in a home environment which is absolutely quiet. So that program could be changed, and you could actually change the whole situation. So somebody who has a slope of different kind, hearing can be seen by pure tone audiograms. All about that, audiograms, which is basically a hearing test, which is not a speech test. It's a pure tone. So you give pure tone, try to plot it where the patient is hearing. So you can have a high frequency loss, you can have a low frequency loss. So or you can have a flat curve. So depending where the graph is, how the graph is, you could change the program of the hearing aid to cater on to this kind of a loss. So if you have a loss only in the low frequency, then you want to augment only the low frequency, not the mid frequency, the high frequency. Because if you do that, then that part of the speech will become too loud, and the
Dr. Sachdeva, you're not audible.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. We lost out, I think, in 2 or 3 sentences.
Oh, right. Okay.
When you were talking about the audiometry.
Yeah. So I think there is something, I tried to get that sorted out. There's something wrong with the internet, isn't it?
No, it was fine all the while in between, just 2, 3 sentences. When you're talking about audiometry, and you said when the sound is very loud, it can be distracting, that part.
Yeah, so I'll repeat that last sentence, which I said that in case you have an audiometry where you have different hearing disability plotted. So you can either have a low frequency hearing sound disability, or a high frequency, or a mid frequency. So these aids these digital aids, with the help of a computer, they can be programmed in such a way that they will augment only the sound which is loss or less. So they will not augment the whole gamut of the screen of the audiometer. So with the result, what happens is that if you try to augment with an analog system a whole plot, so that means you augment the low frequency, mid frequency, and high frequency all together. Then if you have a very less disability in a high frequency, that gets augmented beyond the hearing level. So this what happens is patient will start saying that I hear an echo, or I cannot make out the words very clearly, or if there's a lot of background sound, I miss out on words completely. Or maybe television, I can hear few parts, I can't hear few parts. So that's a very common complaint with the hearing aid, and that is why people were not using hearing aids. Now with the digital system, that can be circumvented, because you could actually modify this whole scenario with the help of a computer. So you only augment sound which is lower than the norm. So if it is a mid-frequency hearing loss, then you only augment mid-frequencies. Do not touch the low frequency or high frequency. Or you only augment that much of hearing loss where there is a disability.
Hi, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Just give us a moment. We're just trying to fix this.
Yeah, sure.
yeah, it's audible now. Yeah.
Okay, give us a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, so this is a small graphical representation of how cochlear implant works. So if you can, is my screen all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, it's visible clearly.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is what how the sound. This is the outer ear. You all can see that and appreciate. These waves that you can see are actually entering the ear and then moving the eardrum. So that gray thing that you can see is the eardrum, and these three army-like things of three small bones which move, and that is the membrane, the inner ear membrane, and this round 2.5 turn is of a cochlea which is moving, and this is the higher magnification of the cochlea. So what happens is when the sound travels, it's a traveling wave kind of a situation. It moves this membrane, which is the membrane up here, which is the tectorial membrane, and that will then move these small haired cells on the organ of Corti. Organ of Corti is the hearing organ, and that causes the nerve impulses to go. So this is how the sound is produced. This is going into the nerve, and this nerve then obviously carries it to the brain. So this is the normal sound production. So what happens in a cochlear implant, the hair cells, they get damaged. So the hair cells are damaged and the sound is not being produced. So the nerve is not not working. So you instill or put surgically electrode or electrode array, which is then, of course, this is being generated through an electricity. Electrical produces impulses which are actually behind the ear through a magnet. And so this is an implant. This is an implant which is instilled or put inside the body. This is there going to be there permanently. And this is an outside machine which will pick up the sound from outside and through an electromagnetic wave pass it to this speech processor, which will of course then through an array go into the cochlea, and then the sound will then go into the brain like a normal ear. So this is how the cochlear implant would work in a normal person. So the sound also will be going through the eardrum like a normal person, but that will not go because now the cochlea function is completely stopped, and that will work with a electrode or electric array which is going into the cochlea, which is surgically implanted. There are of course several potential complications associated with this procedure, and they have to be discussed prior to surgery. This is just a situation which I just said, that every surgery has its own problem. So you just can't say that surgery is going to work. So you have to have a kind of a clear-cut rapport with your doctor to understand that this is what is going to happen. And the normal hearing is going to go, because once you put an implant, the remaining part of the cochlea is damaged. Of course, you have now entities or even implants which are going to save whatever is remaining, which is of course a boon. So it's a life, it's obviously changing the scenario, because you can still use your normal hearing as well as the artificial hearing through a cochlear implant. But this so-called artificial hearing is almost as good as a hearing. So you will not find these children lacking in terms of speech gaining ability once you've actually implanted, and you want to implant them as early as possible. So we implant them between 10 months to 1 year, because that is the time which our Indian population takes to figure out that they have a hearing disability and to agree to the fact that they have a hearing disability and something has to be done. Earlier, we were having a problem when children were always coming quite late. If they come very late, then you realize that after 7 years of no hearing, this brain sometimes stops recognizing sound, even if you give sound through a cochlear implant. And their speech was not satisfactorily being replicated, and their ability to reproduce speech was a little troublesome. So we want to implant them as early as possible so that they get on to absolutely being normal children. They go to a normal school and behave normally. So a robust cochlear implant program is a teamwork which needs a lot of hard work, right from the grassroots till the end, and the speech therapy, which is also, but it's very gratifying, very satisfying, because here you change lives. It's a life changer. So these are a few of our implantees, quite a few of them now, about 300. So that is why this subject becomes very close to my heart, and I'm very passionate about it. And I want you people also to help us in making this program all the more robust, because if you are there in the society, and if you're there with the students, and then you will be able to pick up these small points which I've talked about, and pick the hearing disability as early as possible, and give proper intervention, whatever is required, then you will be able to save a lot of disabilities which are going to happen later on in their life. Thank you so much for being there and patient listening. And Dr. Swati, I hope it was, I know there were a few glitches here and there. There's some problem with the internet. We have two now internets and two Wi-Fi systems which all keep crossing with each other. So I have to switch off one, switch on one. So I'm not very well versed with this technology. Cochlear implant is okay, but I can't go beyond that. Anyway, thank you so much for being there, and I'm ready to answer any questions or any comments or anything.
Thank you, Dr. Sachdeva, for that very, very crystal clear presentation. And I'm so glad you started with the structure of the ear. It made it so much simpler for the students. And I'm glad, we keep reiterating the early intervention part when it comes to disability. The sooner we identify a problem, we can start working on it and get some kind of therapy for the child. And we have been discussing early intervention in various aspects of disability. And I'm so glad you, took it up in a big way in your presentation. So students, please, participants, anybody, feel free to ask questions or share anything that you feel like.
Thank you, sir, for a wonderful, wholesome, relevant talk. I have two small questions. One is that how early can a child be given a hearing aid, and do they adapt to it at an early age? Second question is, as regards any implant, there are chances of infection. So how long is that implant safe in a child's ear or any part of the ear?
So coming to your first question, Suparna, that as soon as you can recognize a hearing disability and you feel that this is going to need a hearing aid, you give a hearing aid. So there's no age to it. These children are too young to say that I want it or I don't want it if the child is just 3 months or 4 months of age. So you give them a hearing aid and you have hair bands which are made specially for these small children where the hearing aid can stick. And then you can see how the child is differently responding after you give a hearing aid. So audiologist, trained audiologist will be able to differentiate, or an ENT surgeon who's trained in hearing disability for children will be able to find out the difference, how this child behaves pre-hearing aid and post-hearing aid. And then that is how you know that your hearing aid is well deserved. So that is
Sir, I
first.
am asking this question because, I've seen with older patients like my mother, when she put the hearing aid, she used to feel a lot of side noises and too much clarity in the sound. So she sometimes just took them out. So how such a young child will be able to express, if there is some problem?
Yeah, so that is where the experience would be really making a difference. And of course, you use the right digital age, you have digital aids, and now you have, of course, tools to find out what is the hearing disability in a child. So you know that this 2000 hertz, this is the disability, 4000 hertz, this is the disability. And according to that graph, you give a hearing aid and then see the behavior of a child. So you may not be 100% correct, but then you will be able to see a remarkable difference in how child behaves pre and post hearing aid. And then you have these parameters to assess, clinical parameters, whether the child is starting to cue or to dabble or babble or to make
So your voice is not coming now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Oh, this I think it's an unstable internet. So like I said, that so a good audiologist or a ENT surgeon who's trained with hearing disability for children will be able to pick up the fact that this is a well-deserved hearing aid, or does it need tweaking. And like I said, these are all programmable hearing aids, so they can be programmed and reprogrammed with a computer. So if you find that your ASSR, that's a test that you normally do to find out what is the level of disability at every frequency, like an audiogram which you do for adults. So in adults, you can ask a elderly person or to a person to find out whether you can hear or not. But you can't ask a small child who's 3 months old whether the child can hear or not. So you have objective tests which will give you a fair idea that 2000 hertz, this child is 50 to 60 decibel below power or below normal, or at 4000 is 40. So you have a graph which is there and you base that hearing aid according to the graph. And then not only that, that's only just an objective sense. But here you must realize that this is pure tone versus speech. So you are graphing a pure tone, but actually you are reflecting it onto speech. So when you are speaking, how does the child behave now? And the cues that you have, like at milestones, every month there is a milestone which can be added. And so if you have that chart in front of you, then you so see that, okay, has this milestone been achieved by this 4-month-old child or not? So if that is not happening, then you go back onto your computer and then reprogram it and then keep checking whether things are working well or not. So that is how you do for a small child. And like for an adult, like you said, Suparna, that your mother was not using a hearing aid. That's what I tried to tell you initially, that analog systems were having that problem. But now with good programmable hearing aids, you can program to such an extent that you will get absolute comfortable, normal, near normal speech, and there will be no problems. And few of them now are automated. Like, so if you are sitting on a television, in front of a television, the hearing aid is so smart, they will know that you're actually in front of a hearing television, and you have to basically cut off that surrounding sound of a fan or a AC or something else. Or if you're in a mall, then they would know that you are in a mall and you're in a noisy environment. So that is how they will keep changing the system automatically. So these are all smart or a very highly sophisticated digitalized systems, which will keep, so you have a couple of programs which you feed in on, depending on wherever the person actually will be going in their routine. They will be going to the office, they'll be going to the shopping mall, they will go and sit in the car, they will come out. So all those programs can be combined together. So the hearing aid will be able to figure out which environment you are in and will modify according to that. So that much of gain, that much of tweaking in, and so the surrounding sounds don't disturb you. So that is how the hearing aids are now working. And this technology is moving very, very fast as the cochlear implant upgradation. So when you were talking about earlier generation of cochlear implant, they were very basic. Now things have changed so much that a good cochlear implant, which is actually 3 Texila compatible, that means this implant you can also use in an MRI machine of 3 Texila. You don't have to take out. It's a magnet. You must realize there's a magnet there. So when you are actually seeing that video clip, the two parts, they are actually connected together by a magnet. So the electromagnetic wave, like I said, electromagnetic, so magnetic part is there. So there is a magnet there which had to be removed when you had to do an MRI, and you never know when a child would need an MRI. So now they are all 3 Texila compatible cochlear implants. So this technology is also moving very rapidly.
Thank you so much,
have I
sir.
been
Yeah, I'm so reassured hearing all your answers. Thank you so very much.
Dr. Sachdeva, the hearing aids that you spoke about just now, the sophisticated ones which cut out the sounds that are not required, do they have a specific name or something? I mean, how does one go for these kind of hearing aids?
So they are the digital hearing aids, no?
Okay, just digital hearing aids.
Yeah, they are the
Thank
digital
you.
hearing aids. Of course, the gradation of digital hearing aid is also from A to Z. So,
Okay.
so is the price.
Yes,
Price limits.
I'm
So
sure.
sometimes these,
I'm sure. So I'm sure the ENT doctor will suggest accordingly. I mean, depending on what the person can afford. Dr. Sachdeva, you're not audible.
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes.
I'm sorry, this internet has become.
Yes. Yes. Participants can ask your questions.
Yeah, I
Hello,
missed
Dr.
one question.
Sachdeva.
Suparna was asking
Yeah.
about infection. Sorry.
Yeah.
So there was one question was being asked there. I think I missed out on that question. So about the infection, something was being asked about the infection. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
So what was that question? Sorry, can you come again about that question about the cochlear implant and infection?
Suparna ma'am, would you like to
Suparna,
ask that
can you-
question
yeah.
again?
please repeat your question?
Basically, I wanted to know that, if these implants are there in the ear for a very long time, do they also develop some kind of infection? I mean, being there, but yeah, that's what I wanted to know, because it's like, any other implant, if it is in the body, there are chances of, infection developing after a certain number of years or something.
So no, like you have hip replacement and knee replacement. Behind the ear, and they're surgically implanted inside of the skull in a small child where there's a bone is very can actually, because of it, child will keep falling. Small trivial trauma will not cause a problem, but a major head injury might cause a problem, and then these implants can also get damaged. So that is a different entity, but otherwise they're like any other implants, like a knee replacement implant or a hip replacement implant, or maybe valvular implants, or anything like that. So
Okay, thank you,
they're
sir.
pretty robust.
Okay, thanks.
So I would like to ask one thing, since today in today's time everybody is online and everything, we see young children using a lot of earphones and AirPods and all of that, headphones, whenever they're using their iPads, computers, or phones. So what effect does that have? Because they're on it majority of the times, and they don't tend to see what's happening around them because the volume's a little too loud for the headphones and everything. So how does that, wearing that for longer durations, cause any sort of hearing impairment?
So you're not audible?
Hello.
Yes, you're audible now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Again, there's a problem. So, okay, should I carry on? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so that I hope my children are listening to this answer as well. This is very important for us to realize how sound comes to our ear.
So I guess we lost you again for a few seconds.
Dr. Sachdeva, you're not audible.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I've moved to my phone actually. There was some problem with the net.
Okay. Yeah, we can hear
So
you.
can you hear me now?
Yes, please,
Okay.
we can hear.
So coming back to your question again. Coming back to your question, like I said, I hope my children are hearing that as well. So like I was talking about the sound which is being produced by lightning, isn't it? We all know the fact that light travels faster than sound. We all know that, isn't it? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
sir. Yes,
you're
sir.
audible. Yes.
Right. Thank you. So now if you're actually talking to somebody in Mumbai or Hyderabad or Bangalore, and you can immediately hear that sound, isn't it? It's not getting delayed. Otherwise, it will take 10 minutes to reach you in Delhi, isn't it? So how does that happen? That happens because this sound, which is being, let's say, somebody's talking to you from Mumbai, is piggybacked on a radio wave, and this radio wave travels very rapidly. These are all vibrations. They are all wireless vibration. There's no wire attached to your mobile phone. Now I'm talking to you on a mobile. Maybe there's a delay of few milliseconds. That's all. But otherwise, whatever you can, because with the lips, you can already make out that there's hardly a delay. So whatever I'm speaking can be seen relatively clearly, so to say, from the the sound. So this sound is piggybacked on radio frequency, and these radio frequencies are known to be injurious to inner hair cells. So over a period of time, if you keep listening to these mobile phones with the earpods going inside the ear, then you're getting the radio waves closer to the inner ear structures. So more damaging it can be. So if you have number of hours of this radio waves exposure closer to the ear, then obviously there will be a long-standing damage, and you can have inner ear cell getting damaged over a period of time. So especially the higher frequencies, so the basal turn, where the cochlea is 2.5 turns, so the base of the cochlea, so if you have 2.5 turns, the apex, the inside portion, the apex, the last portion, is representing the low frequency, but the higher frequencies is represented by the base of the cochlea. So that area is very sensitive to these radio waves. So these radio waves over a period of time, if the hours of exposure and the fact that you're getting it closer to the source by putting earpods, then can be damaging. So please be aware. So best would be to go on to the old telephones which are wired, so there is only sound and no radio waves. So radio waves can be injurious. Has that been? Have I been able to clarify my?
Yes, sir,
stance?
thank you. Yes, sir, thank you. Meeta ma'am, you've raised your hand. Is there something you want to
Yeah,
ask?
hello. Thank you, Himanshi. Hello, Doctor. So this
Hello.
side is Meeta, and I'm really, very glad that I could hear your presentation. Very, very nicely put in thoughts everywhere. So, sir, I have two questions. The first one is that you talked about how hearing impairment, impacts children emotionally, cognitively, academically. So I read it somewhere that our ear perform three functions, and which are hearing, balance, and gravity. So I was just curious to know how not being able to hear impacts these children when they are in some sports activities, because there we require a body balance, we require the sense of gravity, like sometimes when like there's something inside the ear, like when the plane is taking off and you are inside the plane, something happens in my ear and it's like it's a buzzing world which comes around. So I was curious to know what happens to these children when they are in the field, when they want to play. How are they able to manage the mechanics of their body? Because somewhere the sense of balance and gravity goes away. Also, secondly, the second question is that hearing impairment is a disability which is somehow invisible. Like if you look at a person who is carrying calipers, who is carrying clutches, or someone who is visually impaired, you are able to look at that person and you are able to make out that this person is facing this disability. But for a hearing impaired person, other people around won't come to know about this person is having any disability until that person starts talking or interacting in her sign language, because that has happened with us also. If there is a hearing impaired person in front of me, I won't be able to make out until that person starts interacting. So because this is a social aspect of disability, that many a times people with disability are not impacted by their disability, but they are impacted by the sense people take it. I mean, like they pity on them and they feel kaise karte honge, taras khate hain. So I mean, when you interact with such people, do they take it as an advantage that others are not able to identify that they are hearing impaired, or somehow they take it as a disadvantage because anyone who could empathize with them otherwise is not able to empathize because that person doesn't know if this person is hearing impaired or not? So thank you so much if you could answer these questions.
So let me come on to the second part of your question, which is very important. Like I've also told earlier during the first part of my lecture, that it's a very important disability because it's an invisible disability. So rest of the disabilities can be seen, like you said, very clearly, that they can be seen and appreciated. But this disability is not So what is more important is then when the disability is so much that a person is excommunicated and person is not in the world, staying in the world, this person is not a happy person. So this person wants to be, he or she would want the disability to be recognized. So it's actually that aspect which is very important. So they unfortunately, because this disability is invisible, nobody actually recognizes. This person can be sitting next to you and you're trying to talk to the person. This person's frustration at that point in time is immense. Now, this person wants to communicate with you. He or she cannot communicate because this person cannot hear what you're saying. So that is an aspect which is very important, especially in elderly. In elderly, they become so reclusive. They become they will not go and mix with people. They will not be, so they degenerate mentally very rapidly. And so people are now talking about Alzheimer's and other mental disorders coming in these adults very, very early, much earlier than their age would be because of this major disability of excommunication. So communication is part of our life. Imagine you not able to communicate. Have you ever done Monworth for 2 days together? It's actually a task. So if you can't hear and you cannot communicate, it's very frustrating for a person. So that is the second question that I was trying to answer. What was the first question? Sorry, you were saying? I've forgotten.
The first question was basically that you talked about how hearing impairment impacts the other domains of development.
Yeah. So you were talking about, yes, balancing. Yes, absolutely. So you are absolutely right. This inner ear has two parts to it. One is a hearing, which is a cochlea. And the second is a semicircular canal, which is the balancing organ. So you may not have a balancing disability in all hearing disabilities. They can be together, but if there is an infection or a trauma or some drugs which have caused this hearing disability, then you can have hearing disability and inability to balance as well. So if you have a balancing disorder on both the sides simultaneously, then this child will also be handicapped because of the balancing disability. But if there's only one organ which is involved, then God has given us such great ability to reform the second organ or the second part of the inner ear. That means if the left side got injured, the right side still is working. The right side will take over the function. So the example that I normally give is that if you have a aeroplane with two engines, then one engine fails, the pilot is so smart that he will put the load on the other and the ear will again get balanced. So this central nervous system is a phenomenal system trying to work out our ways of self-healing. So this is how the self-healing occurs. The other organ takes over the function completely, and this child will be able to play normally in a playground, in spite of the fact that there is a disability of one balancing organ. But if you have both balancing organs gone, then you have other balancing organs which will take over some part of the function. So they will be better off, but not 100% in terms of balancing. But of course, the hearing disability is there, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Sab. It was a sheer joy, hearing you. Thank you so much.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir. I'm Reema this side. Thank you so much, sir, for a very informative presentation. In fact, so many aspects were an eye-opener for me, and yet you could put them so simplistically for our students. So even I have a question. In my younger years, when I was placed as one of the student observer, there was one child in the nursery school whom the teachers had labeled as a very naughty child, because he used to listen to the teacher sometimes and maybe not some other times. And there was an angle from which probably he could hear. Gradually, the parents who were very learned and knowledgeable, they could identify and they could, of course, after coaxing by the teacher and repeated observations, this child was almost on the verge of being labeled as a behavior problem or a moody child or a naughty child. And it was discovered that this child has a progressive hearing loss. So if you could give us more light, always it's bothered me on my, and I've used this as an example to discuss in my class also, the importance of early identification of disability, as you had so beautifully covered in your presentation. So if you could just help me understand progressive hearing loss a little more, because, and even for my students, if you could elaborate more on that, because at that time also the parents and everybody were under a pressure of teaching him as much as possible so that he learns how to speak and understand normally and may not have to move to sign language?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very important aspect that you touch actually, will probably be the crux of whatever I was speaking, and in true sense, that if you pick up one single child who's now aggressive and behaving or misbehaving in a class, not sitting properly, moving around, listening to teacher sometimes, not listening to teacher, beating up other children or misbehaving, and you think that this child is a naughty child or maybe more aggressive. So this child may be having a hearing disability. So a teacher like you would be able to pick it up very rapidly, inform the parents and be proactive in getting it tested. And now we have all the tests which are available, which will be able to give us an answer maybe in couple of hours to say that this child has a hearing disability, and all the problems, psychological problems or the learning issues that the child has, the behavioral problems, the way the child is behaving in the class. Now this child may be behaving absolutely normally in the house environment. Now what happens in a house environment which is much quieter, this child will be able to hear better. But once he comes to a noisy environment of a class, not noisy, but it's basically, other children talking, speaking, it's a large classroom, the things happening all around. This child will not be able to hear as well. So this is a very important aspect that you actually touched. So this parent would be on a total denial phase. Well, how can that be? When I'm listening, when I'm talking to my child, the child responds, he does everything. I don't know what happens. The teachers are not taking part, or maybe what is happening. The students whom he's playing with they are not good students. Please change the classroom, please change the desk, please change this, please change. But no, this child actually has a hearing disability. An intelligent teacher has been able to pick up very rapidly.
Sanjay sir, you're on mute, sir.
Dr. Sachdeva, we lost your voice. Dr. Sachdeva, you're not audible.
Whether it's going to progress further, whether it's a permanent damage or it's just a temporary damage, and then treat it accordingly. So that will be, of course, a privilege of an ENT surgeon who will be close to their house, or their favorite ENT surgeon who will be looking into the matter.
Okay. So should there be a pressure to teach him more? Sorry, we lost you in between.
No. There should be no pressure in teaching him more. You have to treat the hearing disability, and this child will pick up things faster, automatically. No. Basically, you treat that problem.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So your aim is here to pick up these children as early as possible, intervene, get them tested, try to get them sorted out. Whatever is the cause, whether it's a temporary hearing loss, treated, permanent hearing loss, give an aid or whatever. But these children should be taken care of as soon as possible to avoid all the other paraphernalia which are going to come later on in their life. So that is an important aspect.
Okay.
So don't teach them, treat them.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
I think Prerna has a question. Prerna has a question to ask. Prerna, please carry.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Prerna this side. First,
Yeah, hi.
I want to thank you for such a lovely presentation. जैसे आपने वो milestones समझाए, they were really required for our students because, while teaching, we also tell them the importance, of the milestones, कि कितने time पे क्या होगा, नहीं होता तो what next thing will happen. So thank you so much for explaining that. There is a small question. I just wanted to ask, are there any risk or restrictions after the cochlear implant?
So no, this child will be normal, and this child will have to behave normally and have a normal life.
Okay, so there would be no restrictions or risks attached to.
Only thing is, then there are few implants which are also you can swim with, but most of them are you just have to remove the outer speech processor, and whatever is being implanted inside stays. That is not exposed to outside, and you can swim.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
And like I said, now they are most of them now are coming up with 3 Texela compatible. So there is no restriction of removing the implant, which is been surgically implanted, because that magnet is now is okay for 3 Texela. So you can do an MRI of the head without a problem. You don't have to remove the implant. So that is another boon, because this child, you never know when you need an MRI later on in their life. And this implant is the one which has gone in surgically stays for life.
Thank you, sir. So one more thing we just today learned in this today's session was the digital implant you were talking about, that, you know, the mild, moderate, and if they require, depending upon the frequency, which ear requires it, or what is the frequency, that can also be fixed. So thank you so much for answering, sir.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Sachdeva, I have a question. Have you ever come across a patient during your career where a hearing aid would not make a difference to his hearing? Because I did come across a relative of mine who was told by an ENT that you had a profound hearing loss and no assistive aid can be of any help anymore. Does that situation happen?
Yeah, quite often actually. And this is the clear-cut indication of a cochlear implant at whatever age you have. So even if you are 75, 80, as long as you're medically fit and can undergo a surgery. And nowadays, people have started doing surgery. This is simple surgery, so to say, under local anesthesia. If there's any cardiac risk or any anesthesia risk, they can all be implanted. And Germany is actually quite proactive in implanting these elderly people, because they know that these elderly people who are not able to use hearing aid, they are all staying alone. It's a nuclear kind of a situation. The society is such a way that the children go away. So there is only one parent left. And this parent actually will be handling a house with alarm clock, with bell, with telephone, with electronic gadgets which are making sound. And if this person cannot hear, it's actually life-threatening. So they are implanted, and the government actually pays for these implants in Germany. So, and I hope the insurance here as well wakes up, because this is a realistic situation. This is all, it's a situation which is also happening to our country, because children have gone to foreign land and the parents are left alone. And their sound is such an important aspect, you know, and every time of your day, you don't realize how important it is unless you actually close your ears and see that how much you miss and how much you can actually damage yourself by not hearing things. So if your hearing aids are not working, this is a clear-cut indication is that this patient needs cochlear implant at whatever age.
Approximately, what would be the cost incurred for a cochlear implant?
So a basic cochlear implant, basic model, and all the major companies which are dealing with cochlear implants was 6.09 lakhs.
Okay.
Give or two few thousands here and there.
Okay.
Because the GST earlier it was 582 or 583. Mm-hmm. Now with GST it's become 6.09. That's the basic implant. But then you have higher models as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So not something that the normal people can afford in that sense. I mean, unless the insurance covers it.
Yeah, now I think there are some schemes which are EMI situations also which are available. And like if you can go for a car with EMI, why not having an implant which is going to make so much of a difference in a person's life? So then loans are available as well. And of course, government has its own robust program, which is working very well in states. There are a few areas where they give the implants at a reasonably low priced. So there are special rates for government. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking of the underprivileged section of the society, you know, like the children the families that can't afford even EMIs, you know. I was just thinking of that sector, because sometimes when we go to the health centers for eye screening, we do come across, you know, children. So I was just thinking about them. Yeah.
So we were actually doing some free surgeries as well, but that program is not working anymore. So yes, there would be some with this COVID thing, everything has taken a turn actually, topsy-turvy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but actually I hope it becomes a reality, because most of these children who need them are the ones which are coming from underprivileged part of society. True. And we hope that we have some robust programs for them as well. Government is doing their best, but you know how much they can do. because for every single implant, you can have half a state polio vaccine program going in. So you need to prioritize, So
Yes,
we
that's
really
true.
can't. Yeah. So that's a situation which is a real thing. So anyway, we are not here to make policies or to talk about policies at this point in time. This is not the platform, but we hope that something happens for them. We hope
Yes.
that, and also, one fact that at least if they start realizing that this is a need of the hour, then maybe something can be worked on. Most of the time, what happens is people who have very basic education, they don't understand that this is a need. And they don't understand the gravity of the situation. They don't understand how it is going to make a difference in a child's future life. And this child will be absolutely useless in terms of being productive part of society if the child is not able to hear. So their mind doesn't reach there. So that is it should be your motto to teach them, to educate them, to tell them that this is going to make a difference. And if that happens, then something will certainly come across. Because sometimes we find that once we have, even in children, we have of underprivileged part of the society, we've actually given implant free of cost. We have, so they don't appreciate that. They don't look after the implant well. The implant is thrown, or the child just plays around with it, just puts it in water. So those things have also, and they are just not concerned because they don't understand the implication. Like you said, it's a hidden disability. So this hidden disability is hidden to them, and their mind doesn't reach there. So that education part at least should be covered. And I think your team is excellent to do that. I mean, they are all primed to do that. They should do that.
Yes, we have worked so much in the field of vision. We would love to assist you in this as well. I mean, we would love to do some screening for you or
just have
something.
to piggyback this program on your vision program. And there's not much of an effort to be required. So only thing is, if you can do that, it will be actually a help to the society. At least tell the parents, because at this point in time, ignorance is a major problem.
Yes,
so
and
even if some program where they're going to get implants relatively free, not totally free, but maybe relatively free, they will not be able to accept that or take the advantage of that program. So that is at least needs to be primed.
Yes, Dr. Sachdeva, if you come across any such program where these people can benefit from, and if we can do some screening and create some awareness, I think we could join hands and make a difference somewhere, like we did in our vision project. You know about it. You've been encouraging us so much in that as well.
Yeah.
So we would love to help you out with the screening or creating awareness.
So basically, if you are going to screen children, and if you're going to actually figure out disability and hearing disability, all of them will not be going for cochlear implants. Only very few. But if you can actually figure out that there is a hearing disability which can be sorted out by A modality, B modality, at least let's cover up that, and that will be major chunk of the hearing disability. So
if you could just have a checklist or something like that.
Yeah,
something very simple.
We have a very simple checklist, which I think you people who are on the forefront can easily follow.
Absolutely, we would love to assist you in that. And since we are doing a paper on children with disabilities, we would like to contribute in some way, practically.
That will help.
Once the COVID kind of wanes off and we are able to do community work.
But I mean, let's take the advantage of not going to the community at this point in time and take that time to frame our so-called program together, or make our act together, so that we can actually, once it starts, then we don't have any lag period. We can go ahead with the whole situation right through and through. And I have a full-fledged, very intelligent team who's probably also listening in. But I saw them come in, who are very committed, and so we can all work together. And I think it will be nice of us to work together to take this to take this program, at least initiate the program, then see how it goes. And I'm sure once we open a door, then other doors will automatically open. That's what I feel. The nature does it for us,
That is true. So we at JDMC are available. Whenever you get in touch with us, we are willing to start working with you.
Nimi, count us in.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Because
much.
we've done a project on vision, it's such an exhaustive thing. It's a 3-year long, and we're still continuing to work with Dr. Mahipal Sachdev on it. So
Right.
we're screening for eye cancer, that with a smartphone. So we would love to work on hearing as well. And I
Thank
now
you.
request Rima Lamba, my co-coordinator, to extend the formal vote of thanks. I request everybody to unmute the cameras for a group photograph with Dr. Sachdeva, please. It's very rare that we get to get him on the session. Please, everyone, unmute your cameras for a group photograph. That will be very nice. Participants, please unmute and take multiple pictures, Himanshi, so that everybody's covered. Nobody gets left out.
Yes.
And Dr. Sachdeva, I'll be sending to Rama and Murli too.
Oh, thank you.
They wanted your recording, by the way.
Murli will laugh at me.
No, he won't. Rama specifically asked me for your recording. So I said I'll share it with her.
Share it with me at least.
With you, absolutely. With you, absolutely. You're going to be the number one. First thing. As soon as I get it, I'll share it with you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to to us working together.
Sure. That's really nice. Nice of you to offer. Thank you. So I hope my team is listening in and my team will be there as well.
Dr. Sachdev, even count us in the students from Aditi and maybe other colleges as well, because your session has been really, really good. So to begin with, you said when you had the picture of the ear, you said more than meets the eye. Actually, in your session, you've made our eye meet much more than what we can see from the outside.
We are also in the same phase, learning like you are.
I must appreciate that technological glitches did not stop your ethos, your enthusiasm to help our students understand more. Yeah. And it has been a great learning experience. Thank you so much, sir. The kind of experience you carry, but still you could put things so simplistically. I am actually, it's been a touch. Great presentation, sir. Thank you so much. I mean, your passion in this field is so completely evident, and I'm sure all my colleagues and my students would have the same feelings that we have all learned. The simple checklists, the way you put it, everything was so crystal clear that it has not only sensitized us but also brought in clarity that we all are so keen to work in this area. So a heartfelt thanks, sir. I would also like to thank all my colleagues and students who were here. Special thanks to Professor Swati Pal and Professor Mamta Sharma, without whose support this program could have not been done. So this has been one of the last sessions, the valedictory session of the series, but I must say it has been one of the most engaging sessions. And I'm so glad that this series, this certificate course that began on a note on sensory disabilities has again ended in one more sensory disability. And during this journey, all the participants could enjoy and learn, and we could decode some things. If nothing much, we have definitely, I'm sure, Nimi, you would also have the same thoughts as I have right now. Nostalgic that we had difficulties, we had problems, but I'm sure it has been so satisfying, sir, that the way our resource persons, learned people like you have been able to empathize our students. The person like you has so much of passion. It is such a good learning model for our students to follow. I would also like to thank all our lovely student team, without whose support today we would have not been able to do it. Kutsia, Himanshi, Komal, Chavi, Nimi, your constant support, and Surinder ji, who has been there at the background helping us all through the recording. Thank you, sir.
I just want to add one sentence. Dr. Sachdeva, we had your session at the end because I thought it would be a befitting grand finale to the certificate course.
It has been. It has been.
Because I have seen you working, I have heard you, and you invited us to Max Panchsheel, and you did that lovely workshop for my students on a rainy Saturday morning. I still remember, and we were all there. And Dr. Sachdeva made sure that we all had our cup of coffee because it was pouring, and he came all the way from home to do that workshop for us. And I've yet to come across anyone with so much humility and you accepted. I just sent you a WhatsApp message and you instantly accepted. My heartfelt gratitude to you for that. I mean, you are so humble. I mean, it's really amazing to interact with you.
Thank you.
True.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you so
Sachdeva.
much, sir.
Look
Thank you
forward
so
to
much.
hearing from you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And participants, on the 12th, we will have the assessment.